cases and deaths. Where do the experts expect it to go from here?
The experts see signs that the trends in deaths and new cases are starting to flatten out. New York, where the disease is hitting really hard, still managed to keep its hospitals going through the week and didn't run out of ventilators or intensive care unit beds, which of course was a fear for quite a while. Today, the White House briefing folks at the Corona Task Force people, including Dr. Deborah Birx, who's the coordinator of the task force, that the number of cases nationwide continues to double, but is now taking 8 days instead of 2 or 4 days.
But as encouraging as they are, we have not reached the peak. And so every day we need to continue to do what we did yesterday and the week before and the week before that, because that's what in the end is going to take us up across the peak and down the other side.
Any idea how long it will take the country to get down the other side once we do reach the peak?
Well, the peak is a milestone, but it's just marking when things start to get better, not that they are better. So far, there have been about 18,000 deaths, and the forecast the White House leans heavily on still suggests anywhere from 26,000 to nearly 150,000 deaths before this is all over. So there's a lot more to go. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the top infectious disease specialist at the National Institutes of Health, underscored the timing of all this when he talked about the progress in testing drugs to treat the coronavirus.
It'll probably be months. Sometime in the summer, we'll start to see which are working, which are not, and to focus on those that are we developing and will work.
And of course, a vaccine, which would be the ultimate tool to control this coronavirus, won't be ready until next year at the very earliest, assuming scientists come up with one that's effective.
So until a vaccine does become available, is there any more information about drugs that might work to treat COVID-19?
There are a few published studies, mostly reporting about drugs that didn't work. Remember, this disease started in China, and the Chinese scientists were on drug testing pretty early on. And knowing that drugs aren't working is important to know, but of course we also want to hear some good news. Today, the New England Journal of Medicine published a small study about an antiviral drug called remdesivir. The study only involved about 60 patients, and there was no comparison group, so without that, it's hard to say too much. But some patients on the ventilator were improved under this drug, others did die. It is encouraging enough to say that it's worth going full steam ahead on the larger studies of this drug that are now underway.
Aisha, will you tell us a little bit more about the administration response to the people who are dying of this disease? Because it seems more and more that it's a disproportionate number of people of color, and for a while the administration seemed not to be addressing that head on, but today the Surgeon General Jerome Adams really did. What did he say?
So he talked about how he's been talking with African American and Hispanic groups about the outbreak and its impact, and he tried to deliver a message directly to Black Americans and to the Latinx community. He said that African Americans are more likely to have certain conditions like diabetes and asthma. He even held up his own inhaler in the briefing room. Here's some more of what he had to say.
We need you to do this, if not for yourself, then for your abuela. Do it for your granddaddy. Do it for your big mama. Do it for your papa. We need you to understand, especially in communities of color, we need you to step up and help stop the spread so that we can protect those who are most vulnerable. This epidemic is a tragedy, but it will be all the more tragic if we fail to recognize and address the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 and an array of other diseases and risk factors on communities of color.
But while he said that African Americans are not genetically predisposed to getting the coronavirus, he did go on to say that they should avoid alcohol and drugs. He was saying this also about the Hispanic community. Now, I've listened to a lot of these briefings. I have not heard that recommendation about alcohol being made to other demographics. And he was asked about this, and he said that all Americans should be avoiding alcohol, especially if they have pre-existing conditions. But the NAACP has already tweeted about this and said that it was offensive.